Hi all, today is Friday. Welcome back. It looks like we're entering the sad part of the story. The story yesterday saw that Jesus was locked up and beaten by the soldiers. Benjamin continued to walk. If only he could make them release Jesus. But what could a small boy do? He heard loud cries as another crowd gathered at the end of the street. "Hail, King of the Jews!" yelled a soldier as Benjamin pushed his way past men and women. And there stood Jesus. Benjamin looked into Jesus' eyes as Roman soldiers threw a shabby robe over his beaten back. He expected to see hatred, but instead saw only love. Just then, a soldier shoved a crown of thorns on Jesus' head, and another struck him with a stick. Benjamin's eyes filled with tears. Why were they doing this? A few days ago, everyone had called Jesus a king when he entered Jerusalem. Now it seemed they all hated him. Benjamin squatted down and buried his head in his hands. "Please, God," he prayed over and over. "Please make them stop." When he finally opened his eyes, the crowd had moved along. Jesus was gone. He walked over to where they had scorned his friend and picked up a sharp thorn broken from the awful crown. He ran home. His parents paused to hear his story, then sadly shook their heads and returned to their work. Benjamin placed the thorn and the leather strap in his box and cried. Let's look into one of today's eggs. We have several today. There's a picture of the crown of thorns, kind of like the one on Jesus' head. And here is a thorn that I found in my garden. Wow, that seems pretty sharp. I don't think I would like that. Let's put these back in the egg and read a little bit more today. "Benjamin," called Eli, "have you heard? Jesus is going to be crucified." "No," cried Benjamin. "He has done nothing to deserve that." Eli frowned. "My father says that only the worst criminals are put to death on a cross." Benjamin went inside and sat in a dark corner of his house. He did not want to talk or even to think about the sad news. But in his mind he could still see the evil men hurting Jesus. "I must go," he finally said aloud. "If this is partly my fault, I can at least be there. I can pray for him." "Where are you going?" asked his mother as he opened the door. "To help a friend," he said. She nodded and touched his cheek. As Benjamin climbed the hill, he found a large spike. It was like those used by Romans to nail criminals to crosses. He tucked it in his tunic and continued on. 3 crosses stood at the top, but he could not force his eyes to look upon his friend. He noticed a small group of people apart from the larger crowd. He knew they were Jesus' dearest friends. He sat near them and bowed to pray. But the only words that came were, "I'm sorry, God. I am so sorry." Let's take a look in our next egg. Well, there's a nail that we use today when we build things. But also here, I have a cross made of nails that kind of look like the spikes that they used in those days. See this one across here? It kind of looks the same. We'll put our nail back in the egg and maybe we can read one more page. Benjamin watched as soldiers gambled for Jesus' clothes. He tried to shut his ears to their cruel remarks. Finally, he forced himself to look up. Benjamin looked into Jesus' eyes and saw such sorrow and pain that it cut to his heart. but he also saw love. And like before, Jesus looked right at Benjamin. Surely this was his way of saying all would be well. Perhaps he would even do a miracle. But instead, the sky turned dark, and Jesus cried out, "Father, into your hands I commit my spirit." The ground shook, and Jesus breathed his last breath. Benjamin was stunned. His friend was dead. As if in a dream, Benjamin heard the people move about. He saw a soldier pierce his friend's side with a spear. People hurried to take down crosses and bodies before the Sabbath began. Soon they were gone, and he was alone. He picked up a stone the soldiers had gambled with and looked up into the dark sky. Why had God allowed it? Later that night, he opened his treasure box and placed the nail and the gambling stone inside. He looked at his collection. It had seemed so valuable when he believed Jesus was the king. But now the items seemed strange, and they only filled him with unbearable sadness. What's in our next egg? Oh, so today we don't use stones to gamble with. This is called a die. And sometimes we use more than one, like here, in games that we play, like Snakes and Ladders and some other games like Yahtzee. And I think I have another egg here. Oh yeah, and this one has a spear. It's probably different than the ones the soldiers carried in those days. This indeed is a very sad part of the story. But it's not the end of the story. So make sure you come back tomorrow to hear some more. Bye for now.